I think it's the time to continue. Welcome back, all of you, and now we have a presentation of Karin de Jonge, and Karin comes from the Netherlands, and she has studied fine arts at the WdKA in Rotterdam and worked as a visual artist. But over time, she added art education to her curriculum and studied also art history of modern art and world art studies at Leiden University. And Karin has worked over 15 years as a teacher and teaching art theory at the Wilhelm Koning of the Academy, and has also been invited as a keynote lecturer in museums and universities. So now I think, Karin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you for having me here, and I will start my introduction. Thank you for introducing me, and I will start my introduction with the slide I have to change to say the same. That is at the entrance of the Willem de Koning Academy. For Willem de Koning, change was key in keeping his art making alive, and he understood that change was required a lot of risk-taking. It's his quote that adorns the front facade of the Academy building in neon letters, and it is this thinking that has been the footing on which all learning inside our institute is based. The presentation is about risk-taking in art education and the current demand for change provoked by COVID-19 crisis. What change do we strive for within an educational concept that is already changing due to measures taken to prevent the spread of the virus? How do we begin to deal with the strain put on our social encounters within actual and virtual walls of an art school? I will elaborate with an analysis of the absence of sensory interactions by recounting my own and my students' experiences while teaching online from May 2020 to present day, diving into aspects of teaching and learning ranging to aspect of teaching and learning ranging from the basis of communication or lack thereof to contemplating what it actually means to be present or to be respectful during online lessons. What kind of reality are we facing when we are connected online? What is the nature of the connection made? How are we to gauge emotional and social experience through a virtual veil? In short, how can we reach one another when our sensory antennas are less stimulated? In this presentation, I will show you some aspects of online teaching, which emphasizes the challenge of how to activate the students in their learning process. What conditions and inventions must be developed so we can change and stay the same? In my opinion, the condition is the continuous willingness of take risks, and furthermore, being unafraid of making mistakes, ultimately missing the vicinity of old school learning skills might be the much needed impetus for developing hands-on digital tools in this period of digital reality and online art and design education. Staying the same in this context means being able to change, to develop and adjust. Last March, we at the Willem de Koning Academy had to adjust to online teaching due to our very first so-called intelligent lockdown. Many art institutes around the world had to deal with some kind of change from physical to virtual learning, and still do. Many have turned to video communication provided by Zoom, Teams, or other digital means to reach out to students and stay the excising educational structure. I'm sure that many teachers and students have been discovering new options, but also been faced with practical and very fundamental questions about communication, learning, and online teaching. Sensory interactions. The physical and behavioral aspects of learning can be understood as a social construct where peer learning and the physical present is urgent. I will underscore the importance of sensory interactions, not because it is an integral part of human communication in any educational context, but also due to the nature of art making. Touch and tactility are often the utmost importance when creating. Vicinity to teachers and peers are as important as presenting art in real life to an audience. That is, if the work made is made with the purpose of being experienced in real life, as it were, a great deal of learning how to create has been monitored, talked about, felt, and touched in a single space while teachers, students, and peers gather around the work in process. The same is true for attitudes, knowledge, know-how, and skills. These are challenging concepts in any case, and since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, we have to address these concepts online. Active or passive behavior of the student or teacher instructor behind a camera can easily be misinterpreted. Body language is hardly notable or theatrically overdone. Interactions seem to lose spontaneity, and we are left with an unnatural sense of being. Oh, I have to go back. Being present itself becomes even more complicated due to technical obstacles, such as cameras and microphones which have been turned off or are faulty or not available due to economics or social personal constraints. As a teacher, we feel a lack of control and an inability to hold everybody's attention. Students attending a class with their microphones or camera turned off become an ominous phantom and could leave all others involved feeling like they are seen and heard by an invisible presence. The classroom changed to a digital space, which asks for a clear setting and behavior in the private context of the student's room, which offers from the professional setting of a space at the institute, which leads us to the question, what are optimal conditions for learning and teaching in this atmosphere? In short, the didactic and pedagogical relation and stimulation between student and teacher has changed. That change, other than de Kooning suggested with change, is not self-imposed but thrusted upon us. On and offline at the Willem de Kooning Academy. The making skills can be practiced at the stations. These are in learning spaces or laboratories where skills and experiences are practiced using new insight and knowledge. Theory is offered online and offline. We have found that gatherings between students and teachers are essential. Therefore, hybrid and blended learning tools are being developed and served as a learning process for our whole community. Let me explain what I meant by hybrid learning as practice in our art school. We are trying to provide different students with different learning trajectories. The hybridity, as mentioned in the vision of our institute, is student-led. That is, molded around students' learning objectives. Blended learning is understood as a variety of online and offline learning activities where e-learning is blended together with traditional ways of educational activities. A mix of approaches with face-to-face moments and hands-on instructions in an offline situation, alternating with online feed-forward cycles and peer-to-peer activities. However, blended learning is an approach that is molded around a teacher-led situation in a classroom setting. These mixed learning activities have resulted in insights about online teaching as we experienced during the lockdown. In particular, we have been forced to shift from full class interactions to smaller feedback sessions and peer review moments. Performance. Performing and interacting as we are used to in a classroom is nice and inspiring, but in front of a camera, it doesn't affect the same stimuli we often used in learning through interactions. Images seen through cameras and seen on screens are less tangible and evoke less reactions. But the teacher has always been a mediator between the real and the which replaces the real in a classroom through vicinity, mimicry, and body language, etc. We strive to breathe life into texts, images, and concepts. So the question becomes, how do we breathe life into our education when we are apart? And more importantly, how do we fight the screen fatigue to seem to plague length online moments? I would like to suggest theatrics that enhance our online presence, learning from YouTubers and analyzing platforms like Instagram or Tinder might be inspirational. Media literacy or visual literacy. What can be learned from the effectiveness of digital communication? How can facts and fictions be distinguished? Recent research has shown the emergent illiteracy under younger generations. But new media literacy is probably as necessary as being able to read books. Older generations are less used to interpreting online messages in a way that younger generations do. The current media screen generation is far more used to digital communication. As teacher, it's as important to understand these developments. What is seen on slide number 9? Mostly the answer is a planet or the Earth, but the real image shows a pancake. How can be distinguished straight ahead what is to be seen? And how do you see what it looks like? How can we art educators interact with digital communication skills in learning? How to deal with interpretations and recognitions of difference between fact and fiction is a big part of this. A new layer of new media literacy has been added. Let me show you this example. Oh, again, too fast. Provocations of influencers or YouTubers to ignore proper behavior in line with the government COVID-19 measurements was to blame to the misconceptions by the older generations. The online followers, more than 100,000 youngsters, never were urged to disobey the measurements. They understood that the provocation was just a cry for attention. Why online communication has been conceived so differently between the generations? And how can we utilize these highly developed online strategies for learning? As Walter Benjamin claims, the camera comments on the performance constantly. You can think about the use of the camera to focus more on the subject. Not only rethinking how to use media-specific aspects when designing your lessons or learning activities, but also reconsidering the way one could hold the attention of the students, or in other words, how to keep your audience hooked and active. Binge watching historical series, interacting on social media platforms, and playing games spring to mind. I would like you to present a best practice designed during the lockdown by my students. We were trying to adapt an online learning and at the same time designing for those in the same situation. Greetings from Mars is the outcome of the following design. Design an in-depth workshop for the Nederlands Fotomuseum, the Dutch Fotomuseum in Rotterdam, during the lockdown. The workshop is meant for pupils attending primary school or high schools. Use media literacy, photography and citizenship as a formal framework. Choose from themes, apocalypse, dystopia, climate change and/or robotics. Emphasize the conceptual meaning of the assignment for your specific target audience. Assignment goal. The concern is how visual literacy can be enhanced by taking into account 21st century skills. Some of the assignment outlines. Is the workshop and the tools developed for the workshop usable and practical online? Was it a team effort? Is the workshop developed, original, innovative, and does it appeal to artistic sensibilities? Is there an in-depth understanding or use of medium photographic specificity? We're going to the rest. Here we see the results of the children who attended the online workshop, the photos they have made. And let's have a closer look at the workshop developed by our third-year students, Kavi, Mere, Ashley, and Emily for the primary school children.
Welkom in het jaar 2130. Planeet Aarde is helaas onbewoonbaar geworden voor normale mensen. Er leven nog wat kleine organismes en het schubbendier heeft deze ramp overleefd en loopt traag over de aarde op zoek naar eten. Ze hebben het fijn, want de darmen van het schubbendier zijn bestand tegen het eten van plastic. Ze kauwen traag door en zijn in staat de stukjes plastic zo klein te malen dat hun darmen dit als eten zien. De baby's van het schubbendier groeien er goed op. Minivisjes, helemaal onder in de zee, waar geen daglicht aanwezig is, zijn nog in leven. Deze voeden zich met resten, overgebleven van de mensen die naar beneden gezonken zijn. De aarde ligt vol met plastic wat niet af te breken is. Er is een nieuw landschap ontstaan van bergen en dalen. Daar waar ooit olie in de grond zat, is de aarde ingestort en zijn diepe dalen ontstaan. Planten groeien door resten van het menselijke leven heen. Snelwegen zijn overwoekerd en gebouwen ontwricht, doordat er wortels doorheen groeien. Gelukkig is het voor ons nog niet te laat. Ondertussen hebben we heel wat mensen naar andere planeten gestuurd. Eén van die planeten is Mars. En daar kom ik vandaan. Ik ben Kavi en ik kom jullie halen. Welkom in mijn ruimteschip. Op dit moment ben ik onderweg naar aarde om jullie op te halen. Op Mars is het super fijn. We hebben zuurstof voor iedereen. Op Mars zijn we bezig een nieuwe wereld te maken. Alleen missen we een aantal dingen. Een groot deel van de mens heeft last van tandvleesproblemen omdat niemand aan gedacht heeft om een tandenborstel mee te nemen. Ook hebben we echt ontzettend veel zin om spelletjes te spelen, zoals Cluedo, of Mens erger je niet, of Monopoly. Er zijn nog wel wat oude spullen terug te vinden, maar die zijn zo bijzonder en zo kwetsbaar, dat ze in een museum liggen, waar niemand bij kan. Maar gelukkig zijn we slim genoeg geweest om een online museum te maken, waar alles op terug te vinden is. En we hebben jouw hulp nodig om dit online museum te laten groeien. Maar voordat ik aankom op aarde, want ik ben er al bijna, wil ik dat jullie op zoek gaan naar 3 voorwerpen die wij goed kunnen gebruiken op Mars. En maak daar een goede foto van. En samen zorgen we ervoor dat onze online museum de allermooiste gaat worden van het hele universum. Tot straks.
I will summarize it very fastly what is being said. He says, shall I share my screen again?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Share. Welcome in the year 2130. The planet Earth, unfortunately, has become uninhabitable for people because of a disaster and pollution. Only small organisms like small fish and scale beasts are still alive and are able to survive by eating plastics. The earth has collapsed and been screwed up. Plants are growing through human remains, highways and buildings are damaged. However, it's not too late for us. Welcome in my space shuttle. I am Kavi and I am coming to pick you up. At this moment, I'm on my way to the Earth. At Mars, it's super nice. We have oxygen for everybody and we are creating a new world here on Mars. Except we are missing some things. Many people are suffering with gum problems because they have forgotten to take their toothbrush. And some family games, for example. We want to collect useful things. Luckily, we are so smart in creating online museum where we can find everything you look for. But we need your help. I want you to look for useful objects. Make good pictures of it and bring them with you. Pictures like memories from the Earth or history or useful things for Mars. Together, we make sure that our online museum will become one of the nicest of the whole universe. Greetings from Mars. In conclusion, Gert Biestra, the well-known Dutch pedagogue, posits a pedagogical view that is in position to art as self-expression. In his pedagogical view, art can and should be positioned as a mediator between ourselves and the world we inhabit. In this, it helps us understand ourselves and the other within an educational context. What could be emphasized more in his pedagogical approach is the unilateral learning. For example, between online influencers, artists and educators, but also between teacher and students. As the relationship between teacher and student has changed, both are learners and both are teachers. This blurring of positions and the hybrid educational settings are challenging, but present us with the impetus to change. Art education is facing new challenges because of the speedy developments and demands for online education. What conditions and inventions must be developed so we can change and stay the same? In my opinion, the conditions is a continuous willingness of take risks and furthermore, being unafraid of making mistakes. Ultimately, missing the vicinity of the old school learning skills might be the much needed impetus for developing hands-on digital tools in the period of digital reality and online art and design education. Staying the same in this context means being able to change and to develop and adjust. I want to open the discussion by asking, what do you think should change so we can stay the same during these trying yet stimulating circumstances? Thank you very much for your attention. And I open the discussion. Stop sharing.
Yeah.
There it is.
Thank you so much, Karin. It was super interesting, and I think this is fitting so well what Lolita.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. So
excellent.
Karin, it's exactly the same question. Is that how do we bring the old into the new and the new into the old?
Yeah, that's right.
And
connecting also with the circumstances and connecting with the circumstances. And that's what I meant also about these traditions, where are you aware of what is good in your own traditions? And what can you hold on to and what must change in these new circumstances? And that's also, of course, in the climate change context and now this pandemic problem. You know, those global problems that we're facing.
So how do you think your students are adapting to this current way of teaching that you're doing with them?
Well, you saw an example.
Yeah.
And I think, well, that was a very good one. And of course, some are also facing problems because they feel a lack of this physical contact. Yes, for sure, for sure. And that's also the question that I'm facing. How can we enhance that in a better way? And therefore, I think we have to use our creativity because we don't know yet. We only have examples that we can analyze, and that are platforms like those influencers. And that's why I showed up this example, because there was really a gap in understanding this medical, this doctor with his huge context of knowledge, but no strategy of reaching out to certain groups of people that didn't want to obey the measurements of the government, and they were fed up and they stopped with it, and it's over. Well, now we are in a situation with the enormous spread of the virus, so we can learn from each other. The influencer reached out her public, and now she is learning with the doctor about this problem of the virus. So they're learning together. So I don't see a hierarchy anymore between learner and teacher, because both they have things to learn and both they have strategies in their knowledge, but the knowledge is different. And that's the same about reading books. I am educated by reading very many books. But I know a new generation, they don't read books, not very much. But I am not the one who's saying, well, they don't know. They know different things. They have knowledge. And I am curious, how can we bridge this?
Yes, I'm very curious too, because this is a problem which I'm also the book reading person, but yes, I mean, I do look at a lot of digital stuff which is, happening. But so my question is, how do you see this in your context? What is it that you're seeing that's going to bridge this gap? Are your students are drawing online in the art fraternity? How are they doing? Because
yes and no.
Okay.
Both, and that's why our institute calls it the hybrid learning, and we want to take the best of all fields.
Okay.
And not everything online, no. But how can we reach? And that's why I was very much interested in the mobile phone, because you get the connection offline, online, in the same situation. And how can you use that in your education? So I see far more a transdisciplinary interaction in offline, online. But I don't know yet. That's why we're together, I think.
Yes, probably. Yes.
Yeah.
There was one interesting concept you mentioned, this risk-taking.
Risk-taking, yeah.
Risk-taking, and it's somehow, I think, related to our ways to evaluate students, so that how much you can explore or take risks, and there is always possibility of failure.
Yeah, and do you allow a failure? Yeah. I think that's most important. And so I think in our education, we shouldn't face too much on the results, but far more on the process. And sometimes the result is not interesting at all.
Yeah.
But the way and what you found, your research, your methods, how you explore it, and where you bump into problems, that can be interesting.
But how much you see it's related to learning outcomes as a target or focus of evaluation? As you said, that the process and learning outcomes, and then
Yeah.
we are using that as how we ensure quality, so that high level education, high level quality, and then this kind of evaluation can also affect on risk taking and possibility of failure. And I have another question, but let's talk about this first.
Well, that's also, and that's the same also with confronting the idea of what is good design. And that was very much, we got very much educated with the Bauhaus idea for good design, good art. And now we're facing also a variety of very many cultures with other ideas of good design. And especially now in our neo-capitalistic society, it also has an economic value or has to be very cheap produced or whatever. So you get also this kind of quality measurements in value. And well, you see, I can't give you a one answer. I only can see all the problems, how it is connected to each other. And that's why I wanted to show you this best practice of our students, because it was more facing this connection with this overproduction in our world, not thinking of how to reuse it again. And you know, we have to change, in fact, completely in our ideas what is important and what is needed in the value of what is good design. And that's not the idea from the 20th century, from the Bauhaus idea. That was far more in the functional way, how to use it, but not in a contextual way, societal or climate, or not in the environmental problem where what we are facing now. Every country now is facing it, you know, with heat or colds or whatever. And I think, and that's also the need, we are used to consume very many things, but now we have to rethink it again. Do we need it in the way we do consummation? And now lately I've seen here in Holland, there was a car invented by waste, completely, you know, no new products were creating this product. So I think also we as art educators have to bring up problems where our generation will rethink things of what is good, what is nice, what is good design in a completely different context. And that's why I like the film very much, because that was for small children, young children. And we live in a different planet, you know, and of course it asks many questions. And I think that's nice. I think that's far more the way of education that I am, you know, far more confronting with problems instead of giving answers, you know, far more exploring research, whatever outcomes. So the way how you do your research, how you pose your questions, I think that's very interesting.
That's really interesting, because just this morning I had a class with some of my students about the relevance and importance of research. So I suppose you're saying the same thing I'm saying again. Yes.
Yeah. So rethinking Bauhaus, I think that is one, and of course has to do with this modernity and what is modern life. But now we are also seeing the black side of the modern life, you know, overconsumption, pollution, so how we can, and that we can learn from traditions. How did our predecessors did it? Our ancestors lived in the different contexts of the world.
True.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
It would also be nice to have comments or questions from the participants if you have any. So feel free, or ask in the chat as well.
You can see some of my students here.
That's nice. I'm very curious for their comments.
And one or two of them are very fond of asking questions. Srinidhi, do you have a question? Why don't you ask? Yes, please ask.
Okay, so my question was, considering the fact that we are all from remote locations, how would teachers monitor the process of the students? Since you said process is much more important than the outcome.
Yeah.
So how would people manage to monitor, essentially?
Well, we have to design online tools, you know, to be connected in those processes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And well, I know that there are young people are thinking already how to, because of this swap to online teaching in the Netherlands in the lockdown, that the students couldn't or pupils couldn't go to school anymore, which is not the case now, but we are almost close to a lockdown again. And how can you continue your teaching, and how do you reach out your students and those processes? And there are tools that it's a kind of online work channel where the students upload their works, their physical works, what they do at home. And of course, it has to do with the social and economical situation of the students. If they have nothing, then it's really, you get disconnected. That's straight ahead the problem, that's true. But if there are possibilities and that you can have things at home and you can get connected, you can upload your things also in the way to enhance online learning in what kind of websites are you visiting, what programs are you watching, this kind of things you can do, yeah. And books as well, of course. You can share also titles with each other because, well, books are there as well for basic, and it's a choice. You have such a big variety of research tools, so use them and share them, because I think there can be platforms for sharing. Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, I have a small follow-up to that as well. How much, how hard has it been for both your students as well as the teachers? How hard has it been to get used to these technologies, you know, to utilize them effectively and efficiently? Sorry about the background.
Yeah, a good question. I think that is different. That is different for personal reasons. I am, of course, I ask my students, what do you think, what did you like and what you didn't like, and how can we improve? And of course, I had to learn as well, especially as an art theory teacher. I love to tell stories, to histories, and that can't be online. It's not, it's impossible, you know.
Really impossible.
And so how you how you deal with this, and of course so you had to break it up. You had to create a variety of how to tell your stories, in fact in a different way, so you have to organize it in a different way. Yeah. And I ask straight ahead feedback, but also posing a problem and making the students think about it, coming together, talking, and then also also telling sometimes information, of course, yeah, but not so much in the way I was used to in my classroom. But this interaction with students, what they think of it, I think that's very important. And they show me also ways of how, what I can do to better this interaction, which is failing, of course, in this online situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've found peer learning quite important, especially in large groups, that you share your work, like teaching artistic practice. You share your work in advance and people look at each other's work so that they are already familiar, or even write some small comments on an online platform. And then we meet, when we meet in Zoom, everyone talks and someone comments, or in a large group you use breakouts room and people have peer discussions about theoretical material, articles, or their own work. And I think there was a comment from Sonia.
Yeah, she's got a comment. Yeah. Sonia, would you like to elaborate on that?
Hi, I'm Sonia. I was reacting to the question posed about how does it actually work if you're online and are people cut off. Karin is my colleague. We work together, and I also work in a high school where you have this problem that some children, they don't have a laptop with a camera, or they have a mobile phone but the camera is not working, or there's just no financial position for them to participate. And even though we are looking for new strategies, the oldest strategy we have is to care for one another. So a very quick solution is we just gathered all of the laptops that were a little outdated but had a working camera. We made schematics and we just got into the car and we rang the doorbell, and this is just borrow this until you come back to school. If there are two kids and they live in the same neighborhood, you make sure you introduce them to each other in a way beyond the classroom. Like, this one doesn't have a thing, you do. Could you spend the day together? You know, with the young children in the beginning, we said, it was said that they're less contagious or less prone to, I don't know about the science, but just caring and getting involved with the problem is very much a solution for a lot of this problem. So that's what I was trying to say.
Thank you for your addition. Yeah, that's
yeah,
how we
I think that was good, because I think we are also employing similar methods. So what is very interesting for me, this is just an observation, is that sometimes we think that the West is so much more evolved and all that sitting in India, but the problems I think are the same now. It's all very universal. We're all facing exactly the same issues. So it's really, really a challenge to see where, you know, this goes.
Yeah, I agree. That's also, we are facing with those global problems like the pandemic, but also climate change. So we have to, in fact, cooperate far more than we're used to, and not thinking in differences, but far more in similarities. Yeah, yeah.
One thing you priced up was this peer learning. And I was thinking that these two dimensions, that is peer learning student-led or teacher-led?
Yeah.
So, as Minna gave an example that there were, also you gave examples of formal structures by teachers to make process visible and shareable, so that there are structures given by teachers, and then it's based on peer learning. But how much there is, let's say, gray area or positive creative area which could come from students if peer learning is based on students or student-led? Because this is a little bit black and white, but let's say that we have a classroom and students are in a classroom or lecture room. There is a feeling of control because we think that people are there and we can control somehow the learning situation. But peer learning, which is not based on structures we have decided, is something we don't know. It's a kind of risk taking, and as you mentioned, this blogger or social media expert, this young lady helping this medicine.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of example that she has learned by herself to use social media tools in a way that she has become an influencer.
Yeah.
And how much we could learn from students, or how much students could be creators of relevant ways of communication, interaction, dialogue. This was a long question.
A good question. Well, that's why I showed you the film, because we didn't expect anything of it.
Okay.
We had the assignment, and they could come up with. We didn't know what to expect, and they came up dressed up in this theatrical form, with this small film, which took us to Mars. And we didn't expect it at all. That is a way of you get carried away in a learning process. I want now to make these photographs for Mars, you know, as a pupil. This also we could bring up with maybe art classes, that you these strategies are completely different than how I used to tell or comment art works in my lessons or during my guiding tours in the museum. You know, then you make, in fact, your artwork live, it come to life. Well, we feel now with this distant learning, it's very difficult to bring up theory alive, like I was used to. So, and now I see this form or this strategy as this best practice, as how an idea, how you get involved, how you can bring your pupils or students get this energy that you want to make something. And this is in an online situation. So the pupils are at home and they feel like making photos in this context, which is not a professional context. So, and that's, I see as well in influencers. They are showing you something, you get fond of it, you like it, you want it. So there is a different way of giving instructions. And because we have also these online lectures, you can have a very nice lecture online, but the best ones are scripted, and scripted in a way that you get in this kind of theatrical form to carry away. And that's not when you're doing your lecture and the camera is on it, because it's not scripted and you don't have this control of how you communicate to your audience. So there I see a challenge. And of course, it's completely a different preparation to your education than we were used to. And that's how I see the digital tools, how you can work with them. And of course, that's different. In fact, I am educated with books, but my children are educated with books and also digitally. You know, they were very young. And I remember my mother saying when I'm talking to the telephone 1 hour that it was unhealthy. Now I see this older generation saying, well, it is not good. You know, the youngsters don't read any books anymore. No, but they do different things. Yeah. So I'm curious, how can we learn from each other? And that I see in this cooperation between the doctor and the influencer, that she is now in the hospital together with the medical, and he is learning from her what strategies she used to reach out the audience. But of course, we have to face how we are dealing with it.
Yeah.
It's we don't know.
Interesting.
Innovations.
Yeah, innovation, but no, and I don't see hierarchy. I see an interaction between learner and educator.
True.
And that's why the conversation is so important, the dialogue. Yeah.
There was a comment. There was a comment in chat by Bart that some media definitely are easier to approach through digital platforms than others. If you have tactile materials, it might be difficult to get the resources, and that's true. So I've thought conceptual things or photography or moving image, which are kind of easy to share on this screen. So
yeah.
It's definitely an issue. Important comment.
But I also know that in our institute, in fashion design, also are doing things online. And of course, then it's your own wardrobe where they are thinking about and reusing things. And well, there are ways. You know, we have to break out the frontiers where we're used to, which is common to us, and to rethink and redesign it. So yeah, how to reuse things and to think differently about it.
Cycling.
Yeah, cyclic. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Lolita had in her presentation this idea of life of cycle of life.
Yeah.
And I think in our discussion we have had the same kind of cycle that.
Yes.
And it's nicely connected to learning environment, that how we are learning and what is actually the learning environment. And you started describing a tree and learners and master are sitting under the tree and all these nice buildings around. So it's not only what the master is speaking or what he or she is teaching, but it's the whole surrounding. And yes. Now we are having the same situation that the learning is not only happening in a classroom, but it's a wider context, and we are huge amount of new possibilities to build or co-create learning environments which are not traditional. Coming back to sit under a tree.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are now facing the end of time, and I think, at least to me, this was very inspirational discussion and super interesting presentation from Lolita and Karin, and I'm very pleased that we organized this kind of event, and hope that if in our working group there are people who are interested in going forward, I'm pleased to follow and give any support that we could arrange same kind of events also in the future. or develop some new formats also. This is not the only format we can use. But do you have any ideas to continue this kind of working?
I think we should continue the conversation, Marty, and I'll speak to some other people as well, and we can talk, because we can see the commonalities and how it's coming through. So maybe if we can sum it up in a sort of a thing, and then we can exchange our ideas and then look at another platform where we can have different exchanges and someone can present and we can talk about it, and one of us can host it, you can speak. That can also happen. That's a possibility.
Anyway, this Cumulus Connects platform is now an excellent way to promote these kind of discussions and have a wider audience also.
We should look to see what we could actually put together and make a presentation next year, if possible, at Cumulus in Rome.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, but any other comments at the end?
No, thank you very much. And I'm really curious to the next presentations. And I'm also very curious about this problems we are facing in our art education and how you guys deal with it. And I'm curious also to examples of best practices or even a worse practice, what you don't want and what doesn't work anymore. I think that's good to think of it, because answers we don't have, we have to rethink our art education. And that's the same also with what is a good result. Tol R, that is that Danish artist, for instance, he, I think I'm referring to his art because he makes everything, and it's not about nice and good and so on. It is about how you are facing our reality, and I think that are more things what we can use in art education than about what is good or bad or nice and looks good. I think we have to rethink value. And of course, it's very philosophical, but in the context of our global world and the global problems we are facing for the younger generations, I think that is what I would like to open the discussion about, how we deal with it in art education.
Okay, I think this was very nice closing. At the end, it's question of values.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
See you next time.
Bye. Thank you, Mina. Karin. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.